Hi, how you doing? This is Russell James and you're watching The Raw Chef TV. In this episode, I'm letting the cat out of the bag a little bit. I've not done a video on this for my podcast or any of that other stuff. This is usually reserved for my membership courses and we teach this live as well. But I couldn't hold this back from you. I don't want to hold this back from you because it's such an amazing thing to do, to be able to make raw tree nut cheeses. Now today we're going to make them from macadamias because that tends to be the easiest nut to work with when you're first starting out. Then if you want to go further, as I said, we do this in a home study course and in live classes as well, where we start to use different nuts. But this is really going to produce for you a really beautiful macadamia cheese, and I'll give you a few ideas how you can take it further as well. So let's get into it. So to start with, we've got 2 cups of soaked macadamia nuts. Now often people will say to me, is it 2 cups before or after you soak? To be honest, in this recipe it doesn't really matter. But if you want a definitive answer, 2 cups measured out before you soak. And then what you're going to find is that it balloons into about 2.5 cups. And because we'll soak these minimum 4 hours, but just preferably overnight, soak them in water in the fridge, and then when you're ready to use them, take them out, give them a rinse off, and they're ready to go. Now the reason we soak them is because they're so much more digestible after you've soaked them. And also in this cheese, it makes them taste a little less distinctive, so they don't taste like macadamia nuts when they're in the cheese, because they've been soaked and they're a little bit less fatty. Okay, so we're going to put these into the blender, into the Vitamix. And then we're going to blend those up with about a cup of water. And so I don't usually measure things out all the time when I'm making food. More often than not, I'll just do it by sight. But with this nut cheese, it's quite a definite measure of water because you want the cheese to hold up, not be like a paste and not be runny. So you don't want to overdo it. So I would suggest actually measuring out the water exactly to 1 cup. Having said that, you'll see in a second with the process that we're going to do with the when we strain it out in a nut milk bag or a mesh bag, you can get rid of a little bit of the excess water anyway, so it's always good to start out with a firm as mix as possible. So we've got our water and our macadamias in there. The next thing we're going to need is probiotics. So a lot of people overcomplicate what probiotics are. And it's just a mix of usually acidophilus, and you know all those those Latin names that I'm not even going to attempt to try and pronounce now. Lactobacillus, I think, is one. If you get in capsule form, you want about a teaspoon, which is usually 8 capsules worth. So you just empty your capsule out to the tune of 1 teaspoon, and then that's going to go into the Vitamix, to the cheese, okay, to blend up. Then you can get probiotic powder that is scoopable, not in capsules. So definitely, if you can get that, do that. And this new Chapter brand, the Pro All Flora, is a vegan one. So you really have to, if you're vegan, you really have to be careful that you're not using a dairy-derived probiotic. There's soil-based probiotics, which are really good as well, but definitely check the back. What you'll also find is that they're different quality. So usually a teaspoon will work. Like each probiotic has got a different amount of strains probiotics in there. So if you've got a good quality one, about a teaspoon will work. If your cheese doesn't culture, like I'm going to show you in a second, then it's either because the place you did it wasn't warm enough or your probiotics haven't got enough cultures in. So you may just have to up the amount that you use, maybe to 1.5 teaspoons. But if you use basically New Chapter, any of the decent quality probiotics you find in a good independent health food store are going to work out for you just fine, okay? So let's blend this up. The good thing about the Vitamix here is that you've got a tamper, so you can really get in there and move the mixture around as it's blending. As you can see, I was moving the mixture around quite a lot there with the tamper, and you'll end up, macadamias still go a little bit they look a little bit grainy. They're not going to go really smooth like a cashew would. So as long as you've broken down the macadamia pieces in there you're done. And what that's actually going to do is warm up the mixture a little, which you need warmth for the culturing process. So that's kind of the first stage. To finish off this first stage, what we need to do is get a straining bag. I actually got this from a brewer's website. This is used in home brewing, or you could just use, if you've got a nut milk bag, basically something you can put the mixture in. The smaller the holes in the mesh, the better. Now, what you put this in, there's kind of like a bronze, silver and gold. So if you're just starting out, you've probably got some kind of bowl and some kind of sieve. That's the bronze version. And I'll show you what to do if you've got a chefy inclination. We'll go up to the gold version, and my favourite way to do this stage. Put all your cheese mixture into your mesh bag. And you really want to be quite meticulous with this and get every last bit of cheese out. These are valuable stuff. I understand that macadamia nuts are not the cheapest thing, but the great thing about this is it's so filling and it lasts for ages. You know, this will last for weeks in a sealed container in the fridge. Get these last few bits off the spatula. Alright, then we'll gather that up, and initially you just take your bowl and squeeze it. See if you get any of the liquid out. These nuts were soaking overnight, and I've been really meticulous with only using a whole cup of water. If you haven't got a Vitamix and you've had to use a little bit of extra water to get it to blend and to turn in the blender, you'll find it more water comes off here. There we go. And the reason you're doing this is just so that you end up with a firmer cheese at the end of it all. Okay, so I'm not really squeezing hard. Depending on what bag you're using here, if you squeeze too hard, all of the cheese will start coming through the holes and through the seams of the bag. So don't go crazy. Okay, so once you've got about as much of the water out you think you're going to get out by squeezing, just doing that final squeeze. Twist this up. This is where your sieve comes in. Pop your sieve and then pop a weight on top of that. Now the reason this is my least favourite is because when you get a weight on top of there, such as this jar of water, it can be a little bit unstable. Especially ideally I'd like to put that weight on top to get all the weight going down, but that's a little bit unstable, so I just have to make do. So the next best option is, these work really well, these steamers. So if you've got like a hot steamer, so this is just a pan to catch all of your whey underneath, and you've got the steamer pan here with the holes in. These are really great because you can pop that in there, pop the cheese on, and then you can imagine this sits in there much easier. It's much more stable. Let's just say we're doing it in the sieve. So I like to use a tea towel on top here. I think that's a very British thing to say. Anybody watching in the US now is gonna find that funny. So pop a tea towel onto the cheese, and then the warmest place you can find really. Now, if you just do this on a countertop like this in a kitchen that's like a normal temperature, whatever that is, depending on where you are in the world. Like in the UK, it's not particularly warm a lot of the time. So if I just left that on the countertop, probably want to leave it for as much as 48 hours to really culture and to let the culture in the probiotics really take over the cheese and build and grow and ferment essentially. If you've got a dehydrator, on top of a warm dehydrator will speed up the process. So you might want to maybe leave it for 12 to 24 hours. If it's a really warm dehydrator, then you can even do this like in 8 hours. We're going to the next stage and I'll talk you through that. So that goes into a warm place, and then this is like the gold option that I was talking about. So this is a Cambro container, and this is a chinois. So that's spelled C-H-I-N-O-I-S, chinois, French word, and this is like the most stable of all the options. You can see it really sits in there nicely. We can put a heavy weight on top of there. It strains out and you end up with this beautiful macadamia cheese at the end of it. Okay, so I'll just put this to one side And if you get any more cream in there, like if you've added extra water during the night or the process of culturing, you have squeezed more liquid out, that weight on top, you can use that cream. That's got a lot of probiotics in there. It's really beneficial. You can use it actually to start another batch of cheese, or you can put it in smoothies. Really, really nice, and nut milk as well for extra nutrition. So what we end up with is this beautiful macadamia cheese. You can see that it's nice and firm now, as opposed to when it first came out of the Vitamix. We are going to flavour it up now, so we need to add salt. I like to add a little bit of lemon juice. I like to add a little bit of maybe garlic and onion powder, and nutritional yeast to give it that kind of more cheesy flavour. Otherwise it just tastes like fermented nuts. Okay, so we've got our nutritional yeast, our salt, and a little bit of lemon juice. So these are like base extra things you want to put into just have a well-rounded flavour to the cheese. Okay, so this is Himalayan salt. It's really important that you use a good quality salt. I'm going to put nutritional yeast in. Some people don't like eating nutritional yeast. It's an inactive yeast, so it's not going to grow inside you. Lots of B vitamins in there, and really good for a cheesy flavour. If you don't want to use nutritional yeast, then adding a little bit of garlic powder and onion powder is not a similar taste, but it definitely, in terms of flavour profile, it replaces a lot of the taste that you lose by not having nutritional yeast in there. So then just a touch of sharpness from the lemon juice. I've got some garlic and onion powder here, so I like to add a little bit of those in there as well. And even with the nutritional yeast, it just gives it that extra bit of flavour. Okay, and then we'll start just kind of turning that in. And you probably noticed that when I put the nutritional yeast in, I broke it up with my fingers, like powdered it as I put it in, so you don't get flakes in there. It makes this second stage just a little bit easier. So turning that in, you can give it a good mix, and then we'll give it a taste test and see where we're at. Let's have a little taste. Perfect. That's great. So now this is where even more, I was going to say where the fun starts, but I find this whole process just fascinating fun. And when you end up with a product like this that's completely dairy-free, tastes cheesy, like it's got such a well-rounded flavour, it's all good. But we can do certain things with this now. What I like to do is to take one of these metal rings. I mean, you could basically just put that in a container as it is right now, use it as a spread on raw crackers, or even at this point you can pick a little bit out and kind of sprinkle it onto a salad as it is. And that will firm up when it goes into the fridge. It will firm up a little bit more. It won't be sliceable cheese like a cashew cheese would. We cover that in the home study course in our live classes, but this one we can get to a point where it really holds up together. And we can do that with a metal ring. Okay, so from here you can take a plate, and I like to do this on a piece of baking parchment because it's just easier to move the cheese around. And you can pop that cheese in. Push it down. And this just gives you a really nice, you'll probably get maybe 3 or 4 of these size, maybe even 4 or 5 of these size metal rings worth cheese rounds out of a batch of one recipe of this. And they're just really nice to have in the fridge, you know, to put on a salad or what have you. So we'll just kind of finish off that on top. And then you can lift off this ring just by pushing down gently on top of the cheese. and lifting at the same time. Okay, so you end up with this beautiful cheese round. Again, we'll smooth that off on top. I'm just doing it with a spoon here quickly, but you can get like a palette knife or a spatula and really finish that off nicely. And actually, if you turn it up the other way and just turn it over, that bottom side is going to be even better. It actually looks like a crumbly cheese now on top as well. It doesn't look like you've smoothed it off with a spoon. So that will stay in the fridge for weeks actually, because it's got lots of good bacteria in there. It shouldn't develop a mold because it's got all that good stuff in there. What you can also do is dehydrate this. So put it on a dehydrated tray overnight or even up to 24 hours. It will create a rind. So it will get a little bit rindy on the outside and will create that colour difference, makes it look even more like cheese. So that's your basic macadamia cheese. Give it a go. Yeah, let us know how you get on. Good luck.